Marian sighed as she sank into the worn leather booth at Café du Monde, inhaling the rich scent of chicory coffee and beignets that wafted through the air. Powdered sugar dusted her black blazer, a delicate reminder of the French influence that still permeated her hometown of New Orleans. At 35, she had it all: a high-powered marketing career, a historic Garden District home, and a tight-knit group of girlfriends. Yet there was a restlessness brewing inside her, a sense that she was meant for something more than Mardi Gras soirée and boardroom presentations. As she opened her laptop to finish a client proposal, a notification chimed. "Remember Hugh Nguyen? He just joined Facebook," the screen read. Marian's breath caught in her throat. Could it be? The name immediately transported her back 15 years to the summer she spent teaching English in Vietnam after college graduation. That trip had changed everything. Fresh-faced and idealistic, 22-year-old Marian arrived in Hanoi eager to make a difference. Despite the language barrier and culture shock, she found herself enchanted by the vibrant chaos of the city. The motorbikes weaving between street carts, the tang of nuoc mam seasoning each meal, the smiles of her students who were so eager to learn. And then there was Hugh. 10 years her senior, he was assigned as her classroom assistant and city guide. With his gentle demeanor and lopsided grin, Hugh had a quiet magnetism that drew Marian in. As he helped her navigate lesson plans by day and showed her his favorite faux spots by night, an undeniable spark ignited between them. "Marian, you did very well today," Hio said as they packed up the classroom, his words lilting with a musical Vietnamese accent. "The students, they love your enthusiasm." Marian laughed, tucking an errant strand of blonde hair behind her ear. After a month, she no longer felt like such a fish out of water. Her banh mi orders came out almost fluently, and she had memorized the bus route to the school. Still, Hugh's praise never failed to make her pulse quicken. "I couldn't do it without you, Hugh," she replied. "I think you're the one they really listen to." He ducked his head modestly. But your ideas they make learning fun. Before, English is scary for them, but you make it like a game." They strolled out into the muggy evening, the shouts of street vendors and beep of scooter horns enveloping them. It had become their routine to wander the bustling alleys together after class, Iu pointing out his favorite temples as Marian asked endless questions. That night, as they shared plastic stools and cold beer hoy on the sidewalk, it happened. Mid-laugh, Hugh's hand brushed her bare knee under the makeshift table. It sent a jolt straight through Marian, every nerve ending suddenly electrified. Their eyes locked, the air between them suddenly thick with tension and possibility. Slowly, giving her a chance to pull away, Hugh traced his calloused fingertips down her forearm. "Marian," he murmured, her name a reverent sigh on his lips. "There are things I wish to say to you." She swallowed hard, her heart a hummingbird in her chest. His dark eyes smouldered with an intensity she'd never seen before. "I'm listening," she whispered. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of stolen glances, furtive touches, late-night motorbike rides through the countryside, with Marian's arms wrapped tightly around Haya's waist. Being with him made her feel alive in a way she never had before, like together they could take on the world. But as her return flight loomed closer, an ache took root in Marian's chest. Could this just be a summer fling, an exotic tryst to look back on wistfully? Hugh had a full life in Hanoi, aging parents to support, a bureaucratic school system to navigate. How could she ask him to uproot it all? One steamy afternoon, tangled together on the tiny mattress in Hugh's studio apartment, Marian decided to broach the subject. "My visa, it's up next Friday," she said softly, trailing her fingers along the ridge of his collarbone. Hugh tensed, his breath ragged. "I know, MU, I am trying not to think of it. What if—" She bit her lip. "What if you came back with me, just for a little while to see what life is like in the US? We could figure this out together." Rolling onto his back, Hugh stared at the lazily turning ceiling fan. Several beats passed before he spoke. "You do not know what you ask, Marion," he said quietly. "To leave my family, my responsibilities. I want to be with you, but I am not sure I can be that selfish." Tears pricked the corners of her eyes. She knew it was an enormous request, but the thought of saying goodbye, of never seeing him again, made it hard to breathe. "At least consider it," she pleaded. I love you, Hugh." His eyes softened as he gathered her close, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. "I will think about it, MU, but know that whatever happens, you have changed my life." The humid night hung heavy as Marion waited anxiously outside her hotel, the buzz of cicadas nearly drowning out the erratic thump of her heart. Hugh had promised to meet her one last time before her flight back to the States tomorrow, to give her an answer about whether he would come with her. She paced the uneven sidewalk, rehearsing the persuasive speech she'd crafted. Yes, it was crazy to ask him to leave his whole life behind, but didn't they owe it to themselves to see if this connection was as rare and powerful as it felt? They could build a new life together, learn from each other's cultures, maybe even... Marion. She spun around to see Hugh emerging from the shadows, his normally cheerful face somber. A leaden weight settled in her stomach. She started, but he held up a hand. "Please, I must speak first." He took a deep breath, his gaze boring into hers. "I have thought very hard about your offer, and as much as it pains me, I cannot accept. My parents, they are old and not in good health. My brother relies on my income. To abandon them now, for my own happiness, it would be dishonorable." A ragged sob tore from Marion's throat. Deep down, she'd known this would likely be his answer, but hearing the words out loud, so final, shattered something inside her. Hugh pulled her into a fierce embrace, his own eyes glistening. "I am sorry, MU. If circumstances were different, I would follow you anywhere. But perhaps we found each other at the wrong time in our lives." They clung to each other, the wail of a passing ambulance and the knowledge that this was goodbye, adding a surreal tinge to the moment. After several shuddering breaths, Marion cupped Hugh's face in her hands, memorizing every plane and angle. "I'll never forget you," she rasped. "You'll always be a part of me." With a sad smile, Hugh leaned down to capture her lips in a searing kiss, pouring every ounce of love and longing into it. Then, with one last caress of her cheek, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the Hanoi night. Marion watched him go, hot tears streaming down her face, an overwhelming sense of loss flooding her chest. She knew she had to let him go, to honor his commitment to his family. But as she boarded the plane the next morning, her heart shattered with every mile that carried her further from Vietnam, further from him. Over the next decade and a half, Marion poured herself into her career, channeling her heartbreak into a drive to succeed. She rose through the ranks at her marketing firm, landing prestigious clients and industry accolades. She dated sporadically, but no man ever came close to igniting the same passion and connection she had shared with Hugh. Late at night, after one too many glasses of Merlot, she'd sometimes take out the scrapbook of photos from that magical summer, fingers tracing his boyish grin as tears blurred the images. What might have been? She often wondered how he was, whether he ever thought of her. As the daughter of Vietnamese immigrants herself, Marion knew firsthand the immense pressure and sense of duty that came with being part of a traditional Asian family. She couldn't fault Hugh for putting his loved ones first, even if it meant sacrificing his own heart. Still, in her most secret moments, she fantasized about running into him again someday, about having a second chance. Now, staring at Hugh's name on her computer screen 15 years later, all those memories and long-buried emotions rushed back in vivid technicolor. With shaking fingers, Marion clicked on his profile. There he was, a bit grayer around the temples, but with the same warm eyes that had captivated her so long ago. His relationship status read single. Could this be a sign from the universe that their story wasn't over? pulse racing, Marion navigated to the send message button before she could second-guess herself. She had no idea what to say after all this time, how to bridge the chasm of years and distance that had passed. But seeing his face again, she knew she had to try. Maybe, just maybe, the timing would finally be right. Maybe fate was giving them another shot. Taking a deep breath, Marion began to type with trembling fingers. Hugh, it's been a long time. I don't know if you remember me, but I've never forgotten the summer we shared in Hanoi all those years ago. I know we lost touch, that we had to put duty and circumstance ahead of what was between us, but I've thought of you often over the years, wondered how you are and what might have been. The cursor blinked accusingly as Marion searched for the right words. She didn't want to come on too strong, to presume he was in a place to rekindle anything. For all she knew, he could be content in his life, with no room for ghosts from the past. I'm planning to be in Vietnam next month for a business trip, she typed, choosing her words carefully. If you're open to it, I would love to see you. To catch up on all the years gone by and raise a toast to the special connection we once had. No expectations, I promise, just two old friends reminiscing. Her stomach in knots, she signed it simply M.U. Marianne and hit send before she could chicken out. There, she'd done it, put herself out there one last time. Now all she could do was wait and hope. The next few weeks were some of the longest of Marion's life. She went through the motions at work, sat through client dinners and budget meetings, but her mind was thousands of miles away, wondering if Hugh had seen her message. If it had stirred up the same riot of memories and emotions that seeing his profile had sparked in her. Hugh remained quiet on Facebook, and Marion began to lose hope, kicking herself for reaching out. She'd built this fantasy reunion up in her head, but the reality was they were practically strangers now. Maybe too much time had passed. Maybe those feelings had faded on his end. She promised herself that if she didn't hear back by the time she left for Hanoi, she'd close the door on the past for good. It was time to stop pining for a love that was never fully realized. On the eve of her flight, bags packed and heart heavy, Marion poured a glass of Cabernet and opened her laptop one last time. There, in her message requests, was a name she'd been yearning to see, Hugh Nguyen. Hands shaking, she clicked it open, scared to get her hopes up. Marion M.U. What a wonderful surprise to hear from you after all this time, he had written. You have been on my mind as well, all these years. I would like nothing more than to see you again and catch up on our lives. Name the time and place and I will be there, I promise you. Tears of relief and cautious joy sprang to Marion's eyes. He hadn't forgotten her either. All this time, they'd both been holding on to the memory of that magical connection, so powerful that even years apart couldn't dim it. She wrote back immediately, suggesting they meet at a new upscale coffee house along Hoan Kiem Lake, wanting a neutral location for this loaded reunion. The night before, giddy with anticipation, Marion could hardly sleep. She changed outfits a half-dozen times, wanting to look effortlessly chic and confident, not like someone clinging desperately to a long-ago romance. When she finally walked into the trendy cafe, the din of the lunch crowd faded away, because there he was. Hugh rose from a table by the window, wearing a crisp blue button-down that highlighted his broad shoulders. His hair was trimmer, more salt than pepper now, but his eyes, those eyes that Marion used to get lost in, were the same, crinkled at the corners from his tentative smile. Marion, he said, almost reverently, you look as beautiful as the day we met. Her cheeks warmed as she crossed to him. Hugh, it's really you. He held out his arms hesitantly, and she fell into them, amazed at how familiar he felt after all this time. They embraced for a long moment, almost scared to let go. When they finally slid into their seats, an impossibly tiny table between them, they just stared at each other, drinking in the changes and the achingly recognizable. Marion didn't know where to start, how to encapsulate 15 years in a tidy anecdote. How are your parents? She finally asked. Your brother? Hugh's face softened. They are well. My father, He passed a few years ago, but it was peaceful. He lived a good life. My mother, she lives with my brother and his family now. I'm so sorry to hear about your dad, Marion said, reaching across to squeeze his hand. The spark, the rightness of his skin on hers, was immediate. I know how close you were, he nodded. Thank you, MU. It was a difficult time, but it also reminded me life is short. We must hold tight to what matters, to those we love. His gaze was intense, meaningful. Marion swallowed hard. And have you held tight to love? Hugh looked down at their joined hands. There was a woman, a few years after you. We tried, but no one has ever made me feel the way you did, Marion. What we had, it comes once in a lifetime. I know, she whispered. I felt it too, like a part of me has been missing since that summer. They talked for hours, the coffee growing cold between them. Marion told him about her career, her family, the volunteer work she did with refugee women. Hio caught her up on the school, how he was helping implement more progressive teaching methods, the scholarships he'd fought for so children from disadvantaged communities could attend. Through it all, their hands remained clasped, the energy buzzing between them just as strong as it had been in their 20s. But there was a new undercurrent too, the weight of lived experience, of knowing just how rare and precious a connection like theirs was. As the sun began to dip low over the lake, Marion sighed. I have to get back to my hotel soon, early flight in the morning. Hugh's face fell. Will you come back, or was this just... He trailed off, not wanting to voice the possibility this was a one-time trip down memory lane. Marion took both his hands in hers. I'd like to keep seeing you, Hugh. I know the distance, the cultural differences. It won't be easy, but I think this is our second chance. I don't want to spend another 15 years wondering what if. He broke into a grin, that same boyish smile she'd fallen for all those years ago. Then you have ruined me for any other woman, because I will wait for you, MU, for as long as it takes to get this right. They rose from the table, and he folded her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. Marion breathed him in, amazed at how much this felt like coming home after a lifetime away. I'll call you as soon as I land back in the States, she promised. We'll figure this out, make a plan. We have time now, all the time in the world. With a final searing kiss, full of hope and promise, Marion slipped out of Hio's arms and out the door. But this time she knew, without a doubt, she would return to them again. That they would find a way to rewrite their love story, 15 years in the making. Because when two souls are meant to be together, time and distance are no match for the strength of their bond. In that moment, Marion knew that no matter how many twists and obstacles lay ahead, she and Hio would tackle them together. What they had was worth fighting for, worth nurturing. And if these years had taught them anything, it was to not let true love slip through their fingers again. Fate had given them a precious second chance. And this time, come hell or high water, they would get it right. This time, they would make their own destiny, together. Over the next few months, Marion and Hio were inseparable, even with a vast ocean between them. They video chatted daily, sharing even the most mundane details of their lives. Marion found herself grinning like a fool during quarterly budget meetings, mind wandering to Hio's sweet pillow talk the night before. She flew back to Vietnam as often as possible, stealing long weekends and indulgent breaks between projects. Each time felt simultaneously brand new and like coming home, their bond deeper and more unbreakable. They picnicked under the ancient banyan trees in Hoan Kiem Park, motorbike adventures up the coastline, made love in beach cabanas under the star-strewn sky. Marion was there to hold his hand during his mother's gallbladder surgery, just as Hugh cheered her on from afar before her big pitch to a prestigious client. They were doing the hard work, learning how to fold their lives together across continents and cultures. It wasn't always easy, navigating family expectations, the strain of long distance, the question of whose life would have to be uprooted long term. But every hardship Every difficult conversation about compromise and sacrifice only served to make their relationship stronger, the foundation more unshakable, because they had seen what life looked like without the other, and they knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was a pale comparison to the richness of being together. Bit by bit, they began to craft a plan, a blueprint of a life where neither had to sacrifice their dreams or identity. Marion started looking into overseas assignments, positions that could keep her based in Asia. And Hugh began the long process of securing a visa, of starting to put out feelers with international schools should he decide to join her stateside one day. They both knew it would take work, that there would be lonely stretches and red tape, and a need to think outside the box when it came to their careers and families. But what they were building was worth it, worth rearranging their lives for. Because this once-in-a-lifetime love was everything. On a balmy monsoon season night, nearly 2 years after reuniting, Hugh took Marion to the street corner where they had first tentatively touched hands and hearts all those years ago. Under the hum of the street lamps and the scent of fragrant faux wafting from the vendor stalls, he dropped to one knee. "Marion, aime-you, the day you walked into my classroom all those years ago, I knew my life would never be the same. And even after all the time apart, you never left my heart, never stopped being my soulmate. Our second chance is the greatest gift fate could have granted me. You are my home, my partner, my great love. Will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears streaming down her face, Marion nodded fiercely, dropping to her knees to throw her arms around him. "Yes," she whispered against his ear. "1,000 times yes. You're my destiny too." He slipped his grandmother's ring, a delicate band of jade and gold, onto her shaking hand. It was a perfect fit. 2 cultures, 2 histories, 2 hearts melding into a perfect whole. Just like them. When they finally parted, giddy and exhilarated, Marion laced her fingers with his. "I have a feeling that amazing little street cart is still around the corner. What do you say we toast to our future, to a lifetime of new adventures and second chances?" Hugh grinned, dropping a gentle kiss on her nose. "With you by my side, I'd go anywhere." Hand in hand, not an inch of space between them, they meandered off into their future, into the great wide open of happiness and love. And the city around them, with its pulse and electricity and timeless magic, just smiled. As if to say, "What took you so long? This was how it was always meant to be." Because when 2 hearts are destined, when it's written in the stars, even a decade and a half and a world of difference can't stand in the way. Love, true love, will always find a way home. As the wedding planning kicked into high gear, Marion found herself spending more and more time in Hanoi, determined to blend their 2 cultures into a ceremony that paid homage to both their roots. She pored over swatches of silk ao dai dresses and tasted an endless array of artisanal banh mi for the reception, all while fielding late-night calls with her mother about the merits of peonies versus garden roses. It was chaotic and stressful at times, straddling 2 worlds and wanting to honour both. But through it all, Hugh was her rock, her steady hand when the details threatened to overwhelm. He was there with a joke and a foot rub after a long day of vendor visits, always ready to remind her of what mattered most. The love and commitment they were celebrating, the beautiful life they were building together. And when the big day finally arrived, a sultry June Saturday at a sprawling villa in the countryside, all the stress and logistics melted away. Because there, standing under an archway of vibrant bougainvillea and fragrant jasmine, was the man she had crossed oceans and decades for, the man who made her heart whole. Marion glided down the aisle on her father's arm, a vision in a modern ao dai of the palest jade, Yu's eyes never leaving hers. His own traditional garb, a deep cobalt brocade, made him look every bit the Prince Marion had always known him to be. As they clasped hands and recited the vows they had written themselves, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Because this union, this joining of souls, was so clearly meant to be, a testament to the power of second chances and never giving up on true love. Hugh, I once told you that you would always be a part of me. I had no idea then just how true that would become. You are the piece of my heart I didn't know was missing, the home I will always return to. I promise to love you fiercely, to choose you every day in this life and whatever comes next, because our story, it's timeless. Marion, M.U. There was a time I thought duty and circumstance would keep us apart, but even then, even in the hardest moments, I knew the force of what we had could never be denied. You are my soulmate, my partner, my greatest adventure. I vow to spend forever showing you just how grateful I am for this second chance, for the extraordinary privilege of loving you. And as they were declared husband and wife, as Hugh dipped Marion into a movie-worthy kiss, the crowd erupted into applause, the clinking of champagne flutes and whoops of joy rising into the warm summer air. The reception was a rollicking fusion of East meets West, of Goi Kwon and Jambalaya, traditional fan dances and top 40 hits that had young and old alike flooding the dance floor. At one point, Marion found herself sandwiched between Hugh's grandmother and her own, the two matriarchs laughing and shimmying despite the language barrier. As the night wore on and the revellers began to trickle out, Marion and Hugh snuck off to a quiet corner of the candlelit courtyard, needing a moment just for them. They swayed in each other's arms, Hugh's face buried in Marion's neck, breathing her in. "I keep waiting to wake up," Marion murmured, "to find out this has all been a beautiful dream." Hugh pulled back to cup her face in his hands, his expression serious. "This is no dream, voyeur. This is our reality, the life we fought for, the love we get to live every day, and it's only the beginning." Marion nuzzled into his touch, knowing he was right, because standing there under the twinkling lights, wrapped in the arms of the man she adored, she knew this was where she was always meant to be. This was the great love story of her life. In the weeks and months following, they settled into the sweet rhythm of newlywed life. They honeymooned on the sun-drenched beaches of Da Nang, learning every curve and plane of each other's bodies, dreaming up the next chapters of their lives. Marion accepted an executive position with her firm's new Southeast Asia division, a role that would keep her based in Hanoi and afford Hugh the time to transition out of his teaching job thoughtfully. They started house hunting for a place to make their own, a cozy nest to fill with laughter and mementos, and maybe, someday, little feet pattering down the halls. It wasn't always perfect or easy, this blending of backgrounds and negotiation of a partnership that spanned distance and tradition. They faced their share of hiccups and misunderstandings, of inside jokes lost in cultural translation. But at the core of it, at the heart of what made them work, was an unwavering commitment to choosing each other, to showing up and fighting for the love they had spent so long yearning for. It was a foundation built on respect and growth, on the understanding that real love, lasting love, requires tending and nurturing. And tend to it they did, with date nights spent meandering the lantern-lit streets of the Old Quarter, lazy Sunday mornings tangled in the sheets and each other. With honest conversations and healthy debate, a constant seeking to know each other more deeply. As the years passed in a blur of laughter and tears, of triumphs and challenges faced hand in hand, one thing remained unchanging: the strength of what they had found in each other. A port in every storm, a soft place to land. They started their own scholarship fund for bright young women from underprivileged communities, a chance to broaden horizons just as their own had been. They hosted raucous Lunar New Year festivities and Thanksgiving dinners, where the turkey was just as likely to be served alongside pho, a happy mishmash of heritage and heart. And when, on a misty autumn morning, they welcomed their daughter into the world, a perfect alchemy of his almond eyes and her button nose, they knew this too was a piece of their destiny falling into place. because this precious girl, with her wide-eyed wonder at the world, was the living, breathing proof of what could bloom from a seed planted decades before. From two souls determined to find their way back to each other against all odds. As Marion watched Hugh rock their baby girl to sleep, his voice low and soothing as he sang a lullaby of his own childhood, she felt the pieces of her world lock into place, an overwhelming rightness settling deep into her bones. This, she knew, was where she had always been headed. This man, this family, this great sweeping love story that had been written in the stars long before she had ever set foot in that Hanoi classroom. And as she slipped her arms around Hugh's waist, their daughter cooing between them, Marion had never been more grateful for the twists of fate that had led them home to each other again and again. For this was a love that could not be denied, an epic tale etched into the very fabric of their souls. So they would raise their girl on bedtime stories of the city where her parents fell in love, of the years spent dreaming of a second chance. They would teach her the power of resilience and optimism, of leaning into intuition and learning from every fork in the road. But mostly they would teach her that when you are lucky enough to find the one your heart recognizes as home, you hold on. You fight for it, you believe in it. Because love like that, a connection so true, it comes along once in a lifetime if you're lucky. And Marion, gazing at the husband and child she wouldn't trade for anything, knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that she was the luckiest woman in the world. Fate had conspired to bring her a great, enduring love. But it was the choice she made to never let Hugh go, to build a life in the name of what they had found. That would be her greatest legacy. So she nestled closer, breathing in the sweet scent of new baby and long-held dreams realized. "I'm home," she whispered, to Hugh and the universe at large, "right where I was always meant to be." And somewhere, written in the cosmos and carried on the breeze, the reply seemed to echo back. "Welcome home, dear heart. We've been waiting for you." The years turned like pages in a well-worn book, each chapter more beautiful than the last. Their family grew, their love deepened. First steps turned to first days of school, family adventures to college visits in the blink of an eye. Through it all, Marion and Hugh remained each other's constant, the unshakable foundation on which they had built a life beyond their wildest dreams. They celebrated every milestone, weathered every storm, hand in hand and heart to heart. And when the time came to walk their now-grown daughter down the aisle, her radiant face the perfect blend of her parents' love, they shared a teary, knowing look. Because it felt like a moment coming full circle, a beautiful symmetry to the story they had fought so hard for. Later, swaying in each other's arms as they watched their grandchildren play, Marion leaned up to press a kiss to Hugh's temple, now grey and lined with the passage of time. "We made it," she murmured. "Can you believe it? All those years ago, that first brush of hands. I never could have imagined the journey it would set us on." Hugh smiled down at her, his eyes still holding the same spark and depth that she had fallen for in that sticky Hanoi classroom a lifetime ago. "I did," he said softly. "From the moment I met you, I knew that somehow, some way, we would end up right here, that it would always be you and me, MU." Marion nestled closer, remembering those early days of longing and uncertainty, of oceans between them and a future that felt just out of reach. How far they had come, how much they had weathered and triumphed over to arrive in this perfect slice of time. And she knew, down to her bones, that she wouldn't change a single moment. Because every tear shed, every mile travelled, every leap of faith into the unknown, it had all led here to this man, this love, this life that fit like a key sliding into a lock. She thought back to that night under the street lamps all those years ago, how the words had slipped out like a prayer. "I'll never forget you," she had promised. "You'll always be a part of me." At the time, she hadn't known just how prophetic that vow would be. couldn't have imagined that the man holding her hands and her heart in his would go on to shape every corner of her world, to give her the most precious gifts of partnership and parenthood and soul-deep understanding. But as she looked around at the home and family they had built, the rich tapestry of a shared lifetime woven with equal parts intention and serendipity, Marion couldn't imagine any other ending. Couldn't fathom a path that didn't lead her straight into Hugh's arms, their fate stitched together from the very start. She threaded their fingers together, bringing his knuckles up to brush her lips against. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes glassy, "for being my home, my constant, for never giving up on us, even when the world told us to let go. Our story, it's the stuff of fairy tales, isn't it?" Hugh drew her close, his heartbeat strong and steady against her cheek, that same rhythm she had been falling asleep and waking up to for decades now. "Our love was written in the stars, MU. Fate just needed us to be brave enough to reach for it." And there, wrapped in the arms of her soulmate, as the sounds of their lineage playing and laughing floated on the breeze, Marion closed her eyes and sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. For second chances and leaps of faith, for a love that had transcended every odds stacked against it. Most of all, for the man who had seen her, truly seen her, from the first electric brush of hands, who had held her heart with gentle reverence and fought like hell to make their dreams a reality. It hadn't been easy forging a love across continents and cultural divide, but they had never once wavered, never lost sight of the profound certainty that this once-in-a-lifetime connection was worth every obstacle and sacrifice. That in any crowd, any lifetime, their souls would find their way home to each other. She felt it still, that unbreakable tether, as if their very heartstrings had knotted together at first sight, growing more intricately entwined with each passing year. A love like theirs, it seemed to whisper, is infinite, knows no bounds or borders, no fear or fleeting hesitation. It simply is. The unchanging constant, the northern star that had guided them again and again into the safe harbour of each other's arms. The axis around which their world had joyfully spun for a lifetime now, a fated pirouette always leading them back to their centre. Marion opened her eyes, vision blurry with emotion as she gazed up at the face that had been her North Star, her anchor, for longer than it hadn't now. At the man who represented everything beautiful and lasting in her world, the living embodiment of fabled happily ever afters. "I love you," she murmured, rising on tiptoe to capture his lips in a soft, lingering kiss. One that carried the weight of memory and promise, of a love so enduring it had rewritten the stars themselves. In this life and every one beyond, always anew. He rested his forehead against hers, eyes drifting closed as he breathed her in. "And I will love you, Marion, beyond this world and into the next. When I took your hands in that little cafe after all those years apart, I promised you forever. And I will spend every day, every breath making good on that vow." They held each other like that for a long moment, suspended in the overwhelming gratitude, the sheer incredulity of a wish made and granted, of a love that had survived time and tide to bloom into this beautiful, unshakable constant. When they finally parted, faces etched with matching grins, Hugh held out his hand, eyes sparkling with mischief and adoration. "Come, dance with me, Mrs. Nguyen, the first of 1,000 more, stretching all the way into our next great adventure." Marion laughed, her heart so full it felt liable to burst as she placed her palm against his. In that touch, that warm slide of skin and absolute certainty, she felt the culmination of a journey that had begun decades prior with a trembling grasp under a cafe table, with one brush of fate that had altered the course of everything. She knew then what Hugh had always seemed to know, that from the moment they met, no matter how winding and rocky the path, all roads would lead them here, into this shining golden moment, the shared promise of forever. Because when two souls recognize each other, when a love is written in the cosmos and carried on the very winds of fate, there is no force on earth that can dim its light. There is only the beautiful unfurling, the slow dance of two hearts remembering the steps to a song only they can hear. With a gentle tug, Marion let Hugh sweep her into his arms, their laughter and the sound of tiny running feet the perfect accompaniment. And as they swayed under the star-strewn sky, her head nestled on his shoulder and a lifetime of memories wrapped around them like a weighted blanket. She knew this was where she had always been meant to land, in the arms of a man who represented home in every sense of the word, in the center of a love that had been bigger than fear or doubt from the very beginning. So she closed her eyes, let the music and rightness of it all wash over her, and silently, joyfully, she began to count all over again. 1 dance down, 1,000 more to go. Forever and always, in the shelter of a love that had already walked through fire. A love that would, without question, go on writing its perfect, fated story, in this life and whatever waited beyond.